So special, his blanket. Now, hearing the word blanket, we might think that Krishna, uses it just for covering himself, like when he sleeps, or to protect himself from the cold. But no, he actually carries a blanket as part of his, his outfit every day while going to the forest with his cows. During my research, I found an old painting in Vrindavan that depicts not only Krishna, but all the cowherd boys wearing blankets while herding cows. And then I found out that even today, there's a caste of herdsmen in Gujarat, India, that still carry big sticks, and they wear blankets on their shoulders as a uniform, which distinguishes them from the shepherd caste who herd goats. They don't wear the blankets. And actually, there's traces of such a tradition as carrying blankets to be seen here and there in Vrindavan as well. Like lots of times we'll be out different villages in Vrindavan, I'll see the cowherd boys, they're carrying blankets. And certainly blankets are very much part of our overall Vedic tradition. The Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, verse 27 describes that when the Brahmin descendants of the Vrishni, Bhoja, and Andaka dynasties, who are all incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhasha, they were given charity in the form of blankets. The exact verse is, the Brahmanas were not only given well-fed cows in charity, but also gold and gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skin seats, that meant deer, blankets, horses, elephants, servants, and sufficient land for maintenance. Now the 10th canto, 10:71:16, also mentions blankets. When Lord Krishna departed Dwarka to fight with Jarasandha, he was accompanied by an army, he had servants, he even had his queens. So the verse says, on all sides proceeded finely adorned women, attendants of the royal household, as well as courtesans. They rode on palanquins and camels, bulls and buffalo, donkeys, mules, bullock carts, and elephants. Their conveniences were fully loaded with grass tents, blankets, clothes, and other items for the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, it's no surprise then that the Brajavasis had blankets in Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes 5,000 years ago. But it's important to note that such blankets in Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes were particularly special. How so? Because as we've mentioned several times, everything in Braj is personal, everything is conscious. That's the nature of the spiritual world. In fact, Srila Jiva Goswami says in Gopal Champu Purva, first chapter, Prakriti Shtitam Atito Hi. It means Vrindavan is beyond all considerations of dead matter. Vrindavan is beyond all considerations of dead matter. A very eloquent way of saying that in the spiritual world everything's conscious, everything's personal. As a result, 5,000 years ago, during Krishna's pastimes on earth, anything and everything in Vrindavan achieved perfection. Even something so simple as a blanket. For Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 12th chapter, verse 8 says, Kevalena hi bhavena gopyo ghavo naga muriga yene mudha diyo naga siddhamam ir anjasa. Beautiful Sanskrit. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the gopis, cows, unmoving creatures, such as the twin Arjun trees, animals, living entities with stunted consciousness, such as bushes and thickets, and snakes, such as Kaliya, all achieved the perfection of life by unalloyed love for me, and thus they very easily achieved me. This is from the lotus mouth of Sri Krishna. So, something so simple as a blanket, a blanket in Vrindavan, it's not ordinary. It's extraordinary. And thus, there are many pastimes where Krishna's blanket or blankets play a major role. We discussed a few in our last lecture, but for your pleasure, I shall share another beautiful pastime with you now. We find this beautiful pastime containing the blanket in the works of a famous Vaishnava poet named Lalit Kishore. Now, I did some research. Lalit Kishore Das was a contemporary poet of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, who himself was an extraordinary poet. Lalit Kishore was from the village of Uchgaon, near Varshana, Lalita's village, and he was initiated in the line of Gadadhar Pandit of the Panchatattva. His beautiful poetry, I found out, is still sung today in both the Radharaman temple in Vrindavan and Radha Govindaji's temple in Jaipur. They sing his poetry. He wrote a book called Gaur Lila Sagar. Gaur Lila Sagar. And his descriptions of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya were all written in the Braj Bas language of Vrindavan. As an indirect result of this, an indirect result of this, unfortunately, was that his poetry was not widely read during his lifetime because most of Lord Chaitanya's followers were Bengali and were not conversant with the Braj Basa dialect. But fortunately, some of his writings are there now in the Vrindavan Research Institute, so we had a chance to go over them. So he relates that one time some gopis were fetching water from a well in Braj. And of course that's very laborious work. If you see when we go out on Parikram, we often see the young girls, bringing these buckets of water up from the bottom of a well. It's quite strenuous. So that's what was happening. They were fetching water from a well, and it was difficult. So they asked Madhu Mangal, who was resting nearby with Krishna, in a very humble way. They said, "Hey, Madhu Mangal, wake up. You are very strong. Our wrists and arms are weak. Please help us to place these heavy water pots on our heads so that we can carry them to our homes." Now, Madhu Mangal was astonished. He said to the girls, "What nonsense is this? I'm the son of a Brahmana. Did my mother give birth to me to place cheap water pots on the heads of village girls?" So hearing his words, the young gopis, they just started giggling and laughing. So Madhu Mangal became offended, actually became angry, and he looked over to where Krishna was sleeping. But it's described that when he saw Krishna's moon-like face, all his anger dissipated. And pausing for a moment, he thought, I'm not going to waste time arguing with these girls. I'm going to go back to my afternoon nap with Krishna. I'll go back to my nap with Krishna. But, he considered, if I fall asleep now and Krishna wakes up later and goes to herd his cows, I'll miss out on everything. I'll miss out on everything. So I'll do one thing. I'll tie one end of my blanket to Krishna's feet and the other end to my feet. That way, if he wakes up and tries to leave, he'll fall all over me and wake me up too. Interesting plan. So after tying the two of them together, Madhu Mangal laid down to rest, to go to sleep. And then just a couple hours later, Krishna woke up. And as per Madhu Mangal's plan, when he tried to stand up, he quickly fell down over Madhu Mangal because, well, their feet were tied together with Madhu's blanket. So at that moment, of course, Madhu Mangal woke up and he immediately embraced Krishna, who was lying next to him. So Krishna, taking in this situation, he looked at Madhu, he said, Madhu, why did you bind our feet together with a blanket, causing me to fall down on the ground so hard? So Madhu replied, my dear friend, why should you be surprised? Every morning while wrestling, you are defeated by even the smallest of boys, who make you fall on the ground while fighting. What to speak of the strongest fighter, me? This is Madhu Mangal, a funny cowherd boy. But Krishna, the real issue I want to discuss with you is that today your Braja Gopis insulted me. So Krishna, he said, oh, how is that, Madhu? So Madhu Mangal related the whole incident that took place at the water well. And hearing this, Krishna made a concerned look and he said, don't worry, Madhu, we'll take revenge on those girls. The pastime's building up. So the next morning, Krishna and his funny cowherd friend, Madhu Mangal, made their way to a forest trail where the same group of gopis were passing through to fill, after filling their pots with water. And there from a distance, a little distance away, they hid behind the bushes, Krishna and Madhu Mangal threw small stones at the gopis' water pots, causing them to break apart and making all the gopis soaking wet. That was the revenge. So visibly upset, all the girls immediately made their way to Varshana to complain to the Queen of Vrindavan, Srimati Radhika, Srimati Radharani. And upon arriving, Lalita Sakhi came forward and gave a full report to Sri Radha and concluded by saying, O Radhe, Krishna's mischievous behavior is out of control, and on top of that, his fat friend, Madhu Mangal, is helping him to do such things. O Queen of Vrindavan, on behalf of all of his gopis, I'm requesting you to do something. So, hearing from her, like you just say, her favorite gopi, Lalita, Sri Radha took the incident very seriously. And she said, O Lalite, as you are the one who experienced this mockery, the poet uses this word, this mockery, you should tell me what punishment I should give to Krishna this time, indicating there's many times. What punishment should I give to Krishna this time? And Lalita thought for a moment and she replied, Man. Man is the best punishment. So remember, man in Sanskrit means anger. So in other words, she's saying, once again, show your anger to Krishna. And Lalita concluded, but this Krishna, Radhe, he's very tricky. He always finds a way to pacify your anger, but don't allow that to happen this time. You remember so many pastimes we told how Krishna goes in various ways, he pacifies Srimati Radharani's anger. But not this time, Lalita said. And Radha, she continued, for his continuous grievous offenses to us gopis, I also recommend, get this, you steal his cherished blanket, the one woven and embroidered with gold and silver metallic threads and embedded with pearls on the border, that blanket. So Srimati Radharani, she thought for a moment and said, yes, expressing my man, my anger, and stealing his beloved blanket are certainly appropriate punishments. So then Sri Radha, Lalita, and her friends made their way, some distance away, to where Krishna was now taking rest under the shadow of a kadamba tree, while all of his cowherd friends swam in the nearby Chumana River. So he's actually sound asleep. Now at that point, Sri Radha, with the help of her friends, very slowly snuck up They were crawling, not making any, being very careful not to break any little sticks and make a noise or rustle the leaves. They slowly snuck up to where Krishna was sleeping. And with great care and attention, very deftly, they managed to take his blanket from under him. Don't ask me how they did it, but they did it. And they all ran back to Varshana. So not long after Krishna woke up, this is also much nectar, Krishna woke up and noticing that his blanket was gone, he started searching for it frantically everywhere. And unable to find it, he returned to where he'd been sleeping and seeing particular, very unique flowers that are always part of the flower bracelets of Sri Radha lying on the ground, he came to the conclusion that it was Sri Radha, who had stolen his blanket. The little flowers from her bangles. That was the evidence. So now, taking his friend Madhu Mangal with him, Krishna immediately made his way to Varshana to confront Sri Radha, because that blanket's very dear to him. But when he arrived and approached the gates of the palace, a Saki stopped him saying, "Oh, dark-looking cowherd boy, don't you know our queen is resting? You cannot go inside." But Madhu Mangal, he brushed the Saki away, and he and Krishna made their way into the palace. Now, while passing by one of the many rooms, they overheard Sri Radha and her girlfriends laughing and joking about how Sri Radha had silently stolen Krishna's beloved blanket. So entering the room, Krishna said to Radha, "My dear Sri Radhe, I know you have stolen my blanket. Please give it back to me, as this blanket was given to me by my mother Yashoda, and she will be very upset if it's lost." So at that point, one of the girls, one of the gopis, she spoke up saying, "Krishna, why would our queen steal your dark, dusty blanket?" I really like that one. "Krishna, why would our queen, Sri Radha, steal your dark, dusty blanket?" So Krishna kind of took it all in. He paused for a moment, and it's so nice, he said very softly, "To punish me." To punish me. So then Sri Radha said, "Exactly, Krishna. And it appears you have realized now how you have mistreated my dear friends. But I will only return your blanket on one condition." So Krishna, he said, "Whatever the condition is, I will accept. Just please give me back my blanket." So Radha, she shot back, "No. First listen and then agree to the condition. Then only I'll return your blanket." So Krishna said, "All right, what's the condition? Whatever it is." So Radha, she said very slowly, "The condition is you take 4 explicit vows, special vows." You should take some vows here, Krishna, 4. So Krishna said, "What are the 4 vows?" It's so sweet, Prabhus. Listen to this. Sri Radha said, "The first vow is that you will never trouble my dear gopis again." So Krishna said, "Yes, my beloved, I take that vow." Then Sri Radha said, "The second vow is that you will never leave Braj." So Krishna said, "I accept that vow, Sri Radha. I'll never leave Vrindavan." Then Sri Radha said, "The third vow is that you will always stay within my heart." And Krishna said, "Yes, dear one, I will always remain within your heart." Then Sri Radha said, "And the 4th vow, Krishna, the last vow, is that you will never leave my devotees even during the worst times of their lives." You will never leave my devotees even during the worst times of their lives. So Krishna paused and closing his eyes, he replied with deep emotion, "Yes, dear Radha, I promise I will never abandon those devotees who have taken shelter of you, even when they are experiencing their most difficult of times. Jai Sri Radhe. Yes, dear Radha, I promise I will never abandon those devotees who have taken shelter of you, even when they are experiencing their most difficult of times. Jai Sham. So at this point, Sri Radha broke out in a big smile and handed Krishna back his cherished blanket. Ta-da! And then they embraced each other. And at that point, all the gopis, they'd perform arti to the divine couple, and finally showered them with fragrant flowers. Hare Krishna. So, Prabhus, in this pastime we see once again how deep is Radha's love for Krishna. As we've discussed, so much so that she actually controls him with her love. And we also see how deep is Krishna's love for Radha. For love, of course, is reciprocal. Krishna's love for Radha is expressed in a beautiful verse from the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, Krishna Janma Kanda 1570. I found it. Where Krishna says, listen to this, Rashabdham Kurvatashto Dadami Bhaktim Uttamam Dasabdham Kuravat Paschat Yami Shravana Lobata. Krishna speaking, on hearing the syllable Ra, I become anxious and bestow the most pristine bhakti upon the chanter. And on hearing the syllable Dha, I personally follow the chanter in order to hear the chanting of the name Radha. Let me recite that again. From Krishna's heart. On hearing the syllable Ra, I become anxious and bestow the most pristine bhakti upon the chanter. And on hearing the syllable Dha, I personally follow the chanter in order to hear the chanting of the name Radha. Now, of course, these are all very deep subject matters. This is not like, introductory class to Krishna consciousness or something from Bhagavad Gita. But nevertheless, these matters can be realized by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu under the direction of Srila Prabhupada. In this regard, there is the following verse composed by a Gaudiya Vaishnava named Anadi in his commentary to Chaitanya Chandamrita, verse 28 by Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati. That verse is Krishna Param Bhuja Rasa Sambandha Kasya Na Kachit Janat Yana Bhavat Yevam Tamrasam Gora Parasada. So beautiful. No one in this world has ever had contact with the taste of the ambrosia flowing from Sri Krishna's lotus feet. Only the associates of Sri Chaitanya are familiar with this rasa, liquid mellows, through personal experience. Only by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can we understand these deep subject matters. Once again, no one in this world has ever had contact with the taste of the ambrosia flowing from Sri Krishna's lotus feet. Only the associates of Sri Chaitanya are familiar with this rasa, liquid mellows, through personal experience. Now, in that verse, the word Parshada means literally associates, means the personal associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But I checked with some Sanskrit scholars. It can also mean devotees. So it can read like this. No one in this world has ever had contact with the taste of the ambrosia flowing from Sri Krishna's lotus feet. Only the devotees of Sri Chaitanya are familiar with this rasa, liquid mellows, through personal experience. But the Sanskrit scholars, devotee Sanskrit scholars pointed out to me that using the term devotees is an approximation. For they say that the acharyas say that not all devotees of Mahaprabhu are able to attain success in one lifetime. The Acharyas say that not all devotees of Mahaprabhu are able to attain success in one lifetime. Nevertheless, we, as members of ISKCON, we have an extra added incentive. What is that? It's the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. Just as Lord Chaitanya is more merciful than Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, in bringing Lord Chaitanya's movement to the West, he brought it to us in such a way that it's, you could say, easy for Westerners to practice. If we had to practice according to the times of Lord Chaitanya, it would be very difficult. But Prabhupada adapted. He's the Acharya. He can do that. He made it very simple for us. And that simplicity is there in the institution of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we can achieve that exalted state mentioned earlier, if we take proper advantage of that mercy. Therefore, we can pray to him daily. And I'll conclude with this prayer. As I opened the talk today with the prayer to Prabhupada, we glorified him in the middle, we will glorify him at the end. For he's our savior from this ocean of material existence to the lotus feet of Radha Shyam in the spiritual world. And here's this beautiful prayer. Shri Guru Karuna Maya Bandhum Tara Paradhaya Prema Kalpaturu Varadhata Diksha Mantra Harinam Yahara Amulya Dhan Gibo Gabo Tasha Guna Gata. It's one of my favorite prayers. I bow down to the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who is a wish-fulfilling tree of divine love for Krishna, the most magnificent benefactor, who initiated me into the valuable jewels of both the Gayatri and Maha Mantras. How can I sufficiently praise his glories? Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Radha Shyam ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki, Madhu Mangal ki. So thank you, Prabhu. We got 2 classes out of the blanket, which, when hearing these glories, can gradually stimulate and awaken our love for the divine couple. So we'll leave you there from here in Shri Vrindavan Dham on a cold winter's day, and look forward to speaking to you again next Friday. We'll pick another item or article which can help us awaken our love for Krishna and speak about that as well. So thank you. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shyama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari, Shri Mati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, Transcendental Book Distribution ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe, Shine, shine, shine. Glorious to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. A very warm welcome back to our ongoing series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastacha Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, the revealer of the Dham. So, today we are continuing with our mini-series on stimulation for ecstatic love, based on Srila Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion, again, chapter 26. And this will be part 8. We have been discussing different articles or paraphernalia of Krishna upon seeing or hearing about or even simply touching, I was reading, help to awaken love for the Lord within the heart of a devotee. We gave the example in one of our first lectures in the series of a mother who, upon being separated from her small daughter, immediately remembers her upon seeing her daughter's little shoe somewhere. A transcendental example is kindly given by Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, wherein he writes, quote, "In the Kaishora age, beginning from the 11th year and continuing up to the end of the 15th year, Krishna's arms, legs, and thighs become marked with 3 divisional lines. At that time, Krishna's chest challenged a hill of Marakata jewels. His arms challenged pillars of Indranila jewels. The 3 lines of his waist challenged the waves of the river Jamuna, and his thighs challenged beautiful bananas." One gopi said, "With all these exquisite features of his body, Krishna is too extraordinarily beautiful, and therefore I am always thinking of him to protect me, because he is the killer of all demons." So here, I would like to mention again, as I have many times, how indebted we are to both Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada for giving us Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Nectar of Devotion, respectively. Sri Bhana Das writes in his work Kadambari, in the Mangalacharana to that book, verse 7, he writes, it's really nice, "Fine literature is not appreciated by a wicked mortal, much like nectar does not go down Rahu's throat, whereas such literature is treasured in the heart of a good soul, much like Hari's chest bears the splendid Kastuba jewel." Now, Bhana, actually his full name was Bhanabhata. He was a 7th century Sanskrit prose writer and a poet. And his works are well read and famous even today. In fact, I was reading many scholars describe him as Banochistam Jagat Sarvam. A nice title. Banochistam Jagat Sarvam. It means Bana has described everything in this world and nothing is left. We told it all. So, in previous classes, we discussed how blankets are very much involved in Krishna's pastimes and thus help to stimulate our love for Krishna. There's a saying that the Lord accepts ordinary things and makes them extraordinary. An example is given. He accepts the feather of a peacock, which is commonly found on the ground here in Vrindavan, and he takes it and places it on his forehead. Or he holds a flute of bamboo, which grows in the forest. Similarly, the acharyas say that he accepts even the simplest of people who approach him for service and transforms them into transcendental devotees who themselves become capable of fulfilling others' spiritual desires, just like a kalpavriksha tree. So the articles we mentioned, like the peacock feather and the bamboo flute, are simple objects, but they are divine, being related to the Lord. And the same is true with the Lord's blanket. This we have been discussing for 2 lectures now. But my dear Prabhus, we're not finished. Today we will discuss more about Krishna's precious blanket, in the hopes that, again, such a discussion will help awaken love for Krishna. And that love is already there. It's hidden within our hearts. That's described by Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 22, verse 107, very famous verse. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunai Shravanade Shuddha Chitte Karaye Udhai. Quote, Pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, this love naturally awakens. So that's what we're doing here. We're hearing and chanting. Now, the poet Surdas reveals his sentiments about Krishna's blanket in one of his poems that he really dedicates to Sri Radha. He really dedicates, you'll see, he really dedicates this poem to Sri Radha. He writes, "O friend, look, Sri Radha is the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and her lover is a simple cowherd boy. Sri Radha sits on the throne, and her beloved sits on the stem of a tree. Sri Radha wears a golden shawl, and Krishna wears a dark blanket." Surdas says, "O friend, there is no good quality in your Krishna. It's only because of the loving glances of our Queen Radha that everyone treats him with respect." Hare Krishna. So therein we hear how Krishna wore, or eternally wears, a dark blanket. It's interesting to note that now, here in Vrindavan, I often see deities, yesterday I was at the Radharaman temple, a couple of weeks ago I was at Radha Vallabha temple, and both times those deities were wearing dark colored blankets, because it's winter here now. And when I looked more into the matter, I discovered that such blankets that they offer to the Lord are made fragrant before offering with perfumed oils, and are placed near coal heaters to warm them before being offered to the Lord and placed on his body. Such a blanket is called balaposh, Balaposh, balaposh. And furthermore, the blanket, it's described in Shastra that it's light like a feather, warm like a mother's lap, fragrant like flowers, and soft like the tender touch of a newborn baby. The blanket, the deities wear the blanket. Light like a feather, warm like a mother's lap, fragrant like flowers, and soft like the tender touch of a newborn baby. It's deity worship. A side note is that the sadhus here in Braj, they wear blankets called loi. Loi, L-O-I. It's also a dark-colored blanket. It's dark-colored, and it's like very heavy, heavy wool. And centuries ago, these type of blankets were worn by the Brajavasis, like everyone would wear them in those days. And they were sold in a particular marketplace. So much so that marketplace became known as Loi Bazaar. And most ISKCON devotees are well aware of Loi Bazaar these days, which that bazaar specializes in many devotional items. Everyone, ISKCON devotees, they come from the West and they go to Loi Bazaar to buy dhotis and chadars and saris, etc. In my research for this lecture, I discovered that an old tradition in Braj was that if a king or a highly esteemed person would visit a temple in Vrindavan for darshan, the pujari would offer him the maha garland of the deities, mahaprasad from the deities, and in special occasions also a blanket, or the blanket, that the Lord was wearing around his shoulder or around his neck. Now in present day, the culture of giving a maha garland and mahaprasad is still there, but giving a blanket to esteemed persons has now changed to offering like a small scarf. You know, they have some scarves nearby and they touch it to the feet of the deity and they give it to the esteemed person. Just something like this, about that big, not very big. So times have changed. So now, I'd like to share another of Krishna's pastimes that involved his precious dark blanket. This pastime is related by the great devotee Srila Narahari Chakravarti Thakur. Srila Narahari Chakravarti Thakur. In his famous book, Bhakti Ratnakara, it's in the fifth wave, in a section entitled Mathur Mandala Parikrama. Actually, for my lectures, I get a lot of leelas from that book, from that section. So you could say this pastime is one version of the famous pastime of Krishna becoming a boatman and taking Shri Radha and her gopi friends on a boat ride on the Manasi Ganga lake, which we know is at Govardhan Hill. It's one version, just like in the Dankeli, the pastimes where Krishna, taxes the gopis here and there at different times, different places. In Vrindavan, there's slightly different versions. So this is a very nice version of this particular pastime. Now, Manasi Ganga, the history of that sacred lake is very interesting. Once, upon hearing the glories of Mother Ganges, Nanda Maharaj, Mother Yasoda, so many other gopas and gopis, they took Krishna on a journey to the Himalayan mountains to take bath, because they heard how auspicious it was to take bath in the Ganga. On the way, they rested for a little while, and at that point, Krishna questioned the need for all of them to travel so far, telling them that, and this is one of my favorite statements, we have favorite verses, this is a famous statement, all holy places reside in Braj. All holy places reside in Braj. This is one of the beautiful features of Vrindavan. Whatever holy places we see in India and throughout the universe and throughout the cosmos, you can find the original place here in Vrindavan. So at this particular point, Krishna stopped everybody and said, well, first of all, he thought of Ganga Devi. And at once, just by thinking of Ganga Devi, her strong current brought her to that spot where he was standing. At the head of this current was Ganga Devi herself. As we know, she rides an alligator, so she was mounted on an alligator. And this darshan of Ganga astonished Nanda and Yashoda and all the gopis and gopas. So at that point, Krishna said, "My dear friends, all holy places exist in Braj. You want to take bath in the Ganga, so Ganga Devi has personally appeared before you here today in Vrindavan. Please bathe in her waters without delay." It appears they weren't very far, they're just on the frontier of Vrindavan. Krishna didn't want to leave Vrindavan. So Ganga came. So in this way, Manasi Ganga appeared in Vrindavan. And we see her when we go on Govardhan Parikrama, like halfway. Halfway, she's right there at halfway. That's where the Haridev temple is, actually. So she's called Manasi Ganga because she appeared from the mind or the thoughts of Krishna. Manasi means mind. So some, here in Vrindavan, some address her as a river, while others address her as a lake. Now, the currents of Manasi Ganga, I was reading, they flow so swiftly through Govardhan Hill that its powerful waves, or her powerful waves, move even the boulders that line its shores, her shores. So a boatman must be very expert in plying his boat across the lake, especially in the rainy season when thunderstorms often appear. Not an easy thing when the wind comes up and the waves are there. For a boatman to cross Manasi Ganga, it's a real challenge. The waves are so powerful, they move boulders of Govardhan Hill. So one day, Radharani and her gopis were carrying pots full of different milk preparations to offer to one of their favorite deities, Hare Dev. We told that pastime. But it happened to be on the opposite, he happened to be that day on the opposite side of Manasi Ganga. So they were thinking they would take a boat. But when they arrived on the banks of the lake, they were disappointed to find there were no boats at the dock. Actually, there was one old, very rickety boat at the far end of the dock. But there was no boatman in sight. Just the boat was there. All they actually saw was a large, like you could say, crumpled up blanket, in one corner of the deck. So disappointed, the gopis were just about to return home when they heard this low, like moaning sound coming from the old boat, like it's described as if someone was stirring from a deep slumber. So Sri Radha ordered one of her maidservants. She said to her, "Dear one, find out where that noise is coming from." So that Braja Gopi, very dutifully, she walked down the landing, stepped onto that old rickety boat, and very cautiously approached the blanket. Then from beneath the blanket came what sounded like heavy breathing. So the gopi hesitated for a moment, and she looked back towards Sri Radha, who encouraged her with a movement of her hand. So that young gopi took courage and pulled back that old dusty blanket. And there, lo and behold, lying on the boat's deck was a young boatman who, from the sound of his snoring, appeared to be in a deep sleep. So this gopi, she turned back to her friends and Sri Radha. She said in a loud whisper, "It looks like a boatman, but he's asleep." So hearing this, Sri Radha herself walked down the pier, and she stood directly over the boat. Then Sri Radha, she cleared her voice and she called out loudly, "Boatman! Boatman!" But he didn't seem to hear. So she called out again, but this time louder, and it's described very beautifully, accompanied by a chorus of her amused girlfriends. Accompanied by a chorus of her amused girlfriends. So finally, the boatman, he stirred a little bit, and he turned over, and then he sat up, rubbing his eyes. And they could see that he was a young man. He was dressed in simple clothes. He had a dhoti and like a sash, and he was actually wearing a cloak with his hair tucked under a well-worn turban. But Sri Radha noticed immediately that he must have been new, you can say new to his profession, because his hands and feet looked very soft and they had no calluses. What kind of boatman is that, who's rowing all day, has no calluses? So she noticed this. So the boatman, he pulled his blanket off and he sat up and he called out, "It's been a long day and I'm resting. Please get yourself another boat. If you're looking for a boat, it's not going to be this boat. Or you come back tomorrow." And with that, he laid back down. And he pulled his blanket back over him. So at that point, Sri Radha signaled her maidservant to pull the blanket away. Now, Lalita Devi, who's always there to serve Sri Radha, Lalita's her favorite gopi, and Lalita gets angry sometimes when Krishna mistreats Radha. Lalita, who was nearby, said, "Hey, wake up, boatman. The queen of Vrindavan wants to cross the river to worship Haridev. Do not delay. Take your oar and ferry us to the far shore. You will be handsomely rewarded, not to mention the fact that you will have the privilege to serve the most chaste and pious girl of Braj." Of course, meaning Sri Radha. So the boatman, he finally sat up again, and after much discussion, it's described, he reached an agreement with Lalita that his payment for transporting the gopis would be what? The remnants of Haridev's, the prasad they served him, the milk products. As payment, he would get yogurt and butter and kheer and everything they had in their pots. But as the gopis began to board the boatman started insisting that it would be safer if they went in two trips. In other words, he took one group of gopis over, came back and took another group of gopis over, because he felt the boat was a little small for everybody. But Sri Radha would hear nothing of it, because she doesn't want to be separated from her gopis, and they don't want to be separated from her. So the boatman pushed off from the shore, and they noticed that while he was pushing off from the shore, he was smiling, and he was singing a song about boating on a lake with one's sweetheart. They're looking at him. He's singing a song about boating on a lake with one's sweetheart. So everything went well, for some time. They were making good time across the lake. But about a third of the way, the boatman stopped rowing. He tilted his turban back on his head, and he sat down looking out at the river. So all the gopis, they were surprised. They're all looking at one another like, what's happening? So Sri Radha asked one of the gopis to ask the boatman the following. "Oh, boatman, why have you stopped?" To which came the reply from the boatman, "Dear Brajagopi, I'm tired and hungry. You all woke me up after a hard day's work, but before I could have my supper, you told me to leave. Plus, you have filled this boat to twice its capacity. And you insisted that I race to the other side. Neither could I have my supper, and neither did you follow my advice that, we shouldn't all pile in this boat. Now, without eating, I cannot exert myself any further." So at first the gopis, they tried to convince the boatman to continue rowing. Then they actually threatened him. But apparently neither tactic worked. So they gave up, and it's described, they gave him access to their pots. That's how it's described. The author, access to their pots. But he shocked them when he devoured everything in the pots. And then he declared, following such a feast, I must take a short nap. Then, stretching himself out on the floor of the boat, he again covered himself with his blanket and said, "If 2 of you girls massage my feet and another 2 my arms, I should resume my rowing much sooner. I could do it much sooner." So then Lalita, she threatened, "Boatman, unless you start to row right now, we will hold you by your hands and feet and toss you overboard into the lake. Now get up." So with that, the boatman, reluctantly resumed his service. Not so reluctantly, we understand, but he appeared to be reluctant, resuming his service. And not a moment too soon, I was reading. For storm clouds began, how would you say, gathering overhead. And before long, it said a strong wind appeared, like gale force, hurricane wind, along with thunder and lightning, causing the water in the lake to rise. And soon water began to seep into the boat. So shaking his head, the boatman called out over that strong wind, "See, girls, I warned you. I warned all of you together. Would be too heavy a load for this boat. See what's happening? Now look, because it's so heavy and the waves are so strong, my boat is taking on water. So unless you lighten the load here by disposing some precious weight overboard, surely we will sink." So cursing their fate, the gopis had no other choice than to throw their pots overboard. Now, let me tell you that these pots were pure gold. So they're precious and they're heavy. So they had to throw their golden pots overboard. But even as these Braja gopis watched their precious pots disappear into the depths of the river, the boatman called out again, saying, "Ladies, the boat is still taking on water. Now you have to discard your heavy jewelry." Because gopis were wearing bangles and earrings and nose rings and all sorts of necklaces, fine jewelry, heavy. But the girls, they answered in a chorus, again saying, "Never, never." But I was reading as their skirt hems started to soak up the rising water, they reluctantly tossed their necklaces and bracelets and nose rings and everything into the lake's swelling waves, it's described. But the water in the boat kept rising. So the boatman said, "Ladies, the only way we can keep this boat from sinking is if you bail out the water yourselves. If you bail out the water yourselves." To which the gopis answered very angrily, "We could have done that with the pots you made us throw overboard. We could have done it, but you made us throw the pots overboard, so now what?" And then, as the strong winds continued, whipping the lake into a fury, the gopis just sat there, drenched in water up to their waists. Up to their waists. Critical scene here. All Purnamasi's, Yogamaya's arrangement. So at this point, it's described Sri Radha began feeling extremely guilty at risking her girlfriend's lives. But the author says, not to mention being distressed at the thought of never seeing Krishna again. You should also think about that. Not to mention being distressed at the thought of never seeing Krishna again. So having no other recourse, Sri Radha, she stood up and she raised her arms and she called out to the boatman, "Boatman, please save us." And she just threw her arms around him, like in desperation. "Save us." She threw her arms around him. Now it's described at that instant, a flash of lightning struck her. When I read that, I couldn't, what? As soon as she embraced the boatman, a flash of lightning struck her. But, Prabhus, the lightning flash didn't come from the clouds above. Rather, it came from the body of the boatman, who, pleasantly surprised, pulled Sri Radha even closer to him. Now, the effect of the boatman's touch at once revealed his real identity to Sri Radha. She knew who this was, but the gopis, who had never seen Sri Radha even so much as look at another man other than Krishna, they were shocked. They were shocked, and they cried out over this howling wind. All together, another chorus. Lord Shiva, save us. Just as we were about to sink to our watery graves in this lake, chaste Sri Radha tosses us into an ocean of embarrassment. Sri Radha tosses us into an ocean of embarrassment by embracing a low-born boatman. So rather than, saying something, explaining everything to defend herself, Sri Radha reached behind the boatman and from his cloak pulled out, what? A bamboo flute, much like a magician could pull a rabbit out of a hat. And as Radha held up this famous flute, this Venu, the thunder and lightning stopped. The winds died down. The clouds dispersed. The waters receded, and the gopis' faces lit up with smiles. Oh, they cried, it's him. It's Krishna. Oh, they cried, it's him. Then Krishna is described as pleased with himself as an actor receiving a standing ovation, bowed his head towards the gopis and pulled Sri Radha even closer as she struggled to get free from his grasp. The author says the gopis were terribly frightened by this ordeal, and they were still drenched from head to toe. But seeing Krishna standing before them made all the torment worthwhile. That's the word he used. All the torment worthwhile. Now our author, Srila Narahari Chakravarti Thakur, he says, and I'll quote him here, they were, after all, loving puppets in the hands of the Supreme Puppet Master, who pulls strings of love at will, uniting him and his eternal companions upon the stage of his Braja Leela. I'll recite it again. They were, after all, loving puppets in the hands of the Supreme Puppet Master, who pulls strings of love at will, uniting him and his eternal companions upon the stage of his Braja Leela. Then it's described that, then he describes that beneath a silvery moon, Krishna steered the boat towards the nearest island, where he and the gopis changed into dry clothes while joking about the highlights of their adventure. And then once again they boarded the boat, which had, like Krishna, listen to this, cast off its disguise to reveal a golden, jewel-studded luxury craft. The boat had cast off its disguise to reveal a golden, jewel-studded luxury craft, equipped with all necessary things to serve the divine couple, Radha Shyam. Then as Radha and Krishna reclined on a comfortable couch, some gopis sang, others, they played musical instruments, and a few others steered the boat. They steered the boat through the calm, lotus-filled waters of Manasi Ganga. Hare Krishna. Pure nectar. Shri Brajabhumi Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Let us never forget that is the goal of all our practices in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhus, this concludes our lectures on Lord Krishna's blanket as a means to awaken our love for him and his divine consort, Srimati Radharani. Next week we'll be speaking on sandalwood. So many articles in Vrindavan can bring forth that loving mood. So while going to research, I found a few things about sandalwood, and we'll discuss the use of sandalwood in the pastimes of Radha and Krishna as another stimulus for awakening ecstatic love. Now, in preparation for that, I mean like the mood that will accompany that mini-series. We'll conclude today with a verse from Hari Bhakti Vilas, 11th Vilas, text 25 to 31. This will prepare us. Quote, "One should meditate on Krishna as he sits on a lotus throne in a very relaxed manner. The throne is placed in the shade of a desire tree that is situated on a beautiful riverbank and surrounded by lakes filled with lotuses and water lilies. The riverbank is situated at the foot of a golden mountain that is decorated with various minerals, chirping birds, and wish-fulfilling trees. Lord Krishna is decorated with a pearl necklace and a flower garland. The throne is covered with gold and bedecked with jewels, and covered by a colorful canopy. After fixing one's mind on the Lord in this manner, a devotee should worship him with offerings of jati flowers. Then one should offer food to the Lord and his cowherd boyfriends on silver plates. In this way, self-controlled devotees should meditate on Lord Krishna as he is comfortably seated along with all his cowherd friends." Beautiful meditation to prepare us for next Friday. Thank you so much. A goodbye from Shri Vrindavan Dham, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a week's time. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe Sharm. Glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. A warm welcome back again to our ongoing series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. I'm very happy to be with all of you again. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatade Shatane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So today we are continuing with our mini-series entitled Stimulation for Ecstatic Love, with a particular item we hope may help to awaken our love for the divine couple Radha and Krishna. And that item is, today, sandalwood. Sandalwood. And this will be part 9. Now, one of the many benefits of eventually awakening our love for Krishna will be that we become detached almost effortlessly from this miserable material world. Krishna is all attractive. And Chanakya Pandit has said, you can't give up something unless you get something better. So we can give up this world because we have the best, Krishna. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:46-21, where Nanda Maharaj says to Uddhava, Smaratam Krishna Viryani Leela Panga Nirikshtitam Hasitam Basitam Changa Sarvana Stitala Kriya. It's very beautiful. As we remember the wonderful deeds Krishna performed, his playful sidelong glances, his smiles, and his words, O Uddhava, we forget all our material engagements. But as we know, even more important than forgetting all of one's material engagements or one's material attachments is becoming fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So therefore in the next verse, 22, Nanda Maharaj says, quote, when we see the places where Mukunda enjoyed his sporting pastimes, the rivers, hills, and forests he decorated with his lotus feet, our minds become totally absorbed in him. And we also know that the result of being fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, is that eventually our pure love for him will awaken. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami concludes in verse 27, quote, thus intensely remembering Krishna again and again, Nanda Maharaj, his mind completely attached to the Lord, felt extreme anxiety and felt silent, overcome by the strength of his love. Overcome by the strength of his love. So let us discuss today how sandalwood in Krishna's pastimes may contribute to that goal of being overcome by the strength of love. Actually, sandalwood has become somewhat of a rare item in modern times, with so much deforestation going on. Srila Prabhupada refers to this fact in a letter to one of my godbrothers, Nayana Birama, on August 22nd, 1971. Prabhupada wrote to him, Malayan sandalwood is famous as grown in Malaya, but nowadays in Malaya there are only rubber trees. But still in the market, the sandalwood is known as Malayan sandalwood. But even in ancient times, sandalwood was a very highly prized commodity. Chanakya Pandit says, in Niti Shastra 2.9, he writes, Shale shale cha manikyam, muktikam na gaje gaje, sadavo na hi sarvatra, chandanam na vane vane, vane vane. I like this verse, I use it a lot. There does not exist a ruby in every mountain, nor a pearl on the head of every elephant. Neither are sadhus to be found everywhere, nor sandalwood in every forest. Because I love this verse. There does not exist a ruby in every mountain, nor a pearl on the head of every elephant. Neither are sadhus to be found everywhere, nor sandalwood in every forest. Now, an interesting fact is that sandalwood paste keeps one cool in the summer and warm in the winter. I think most devotees relate sandalwood to the cooling effect, but actually it also keeps you warm in the winter. It's almost mystical. According to Chanakya Pandit, again, in his Katila Artha Shastra, sandalwood, again known as chandan in Sanskrit, comes in various colors. Rakta, red, Rakta Krishna, which means reddish black, Rakta Sveta, reddish white, Harita, meaning greenish, Rakta Pita, yellowish red, and Sveta, meaning whitish. And last night, I was interested to read how Vaishnava poets often use analogies of sandalwood in reference to the cooling effect association with sadhus has while one is burning in the fire of material existence. Here's a nice one. The poet Paramananda, we often quote, he writes, Shri Bhalaba Nandana Sab Jaga Bandhana Shetal Chandana Tapa Harasa. That's Brajbasa. He writes, the son of Bhalaba, Jiva Goswami, is worshipped by everyone because he is the one who steals the fire burning in the material world and applies the coolant sandalwood paste of the forehead to give bliss. That's so beautiful. The son of Bhalaba, Jiva Goswami, is worshipped by everyone because he is the one who steals the fire burning in the material world and applies the coolant sandalwood paste on the forehead to give bliss by his numerous writings. Or, here's another one. Chandanam shitalam loke, chandam adapi chandrama, chandra chandana yor madhye, shitala sharushangita. On this planet, the intrinsic nature of sandalwood is that it's very cooling. amongst other refrigerants. More cooling than sandalwood is the moon, and even more cooling than sandalwood and the moon is the association of a sadhu. Wow. And of course, sandalwood plays, as we'll be discussing, an integral part of Krishna Lila. In the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8.32, Kunti Devi poetically refers to this in an analogy. Again, an analogy, this time about Krishna's birth. She says, "Some say that the unborn has taken birth for the glorification of the great pious kings. And others say that you took birth to please King Yadu, one of your dearest devotees. You appeared in his family as sandalwood appears in the Malaya hills." Nice analogy. You appeared in his family as sandalwood, which is so much appreciated, appears in the Malayan hills. And in the 10th canto, chapter 90, verse 19, the gopis use a similar analogy, you could say a romantic appeal to Krishna. They say, quote, O Malayan breeze, what have we done to displease you, so that you stir up love in our hearts, which have already been shattered by Govinda's sidelong glances. Now in Gopal Champu, there's another nice sandalwood analogy used by the gopis in a letter to Krishna, who at that time was living in Mathura. They wrote a letter to Krishna who was living in Mathura. Gopal Champu says, one evening in Mathura, a scented message arrived from the gopis. A scented message arrived from the gopis. When Krishna read it, his resolve to stay in Mathura and to keep his promise to Maharaj Ugrasena crumbled like a sandcastle in the tide. O beloved, the letter read, separation from you has confused our lives. Now the forest has become our home, and our home's a forest. Sandalwood burns our bodies, so we think fire will cool our limbs. We would welcome death to end our pain, but your bold promise to return to Vrindavan has become an obstacle to such relief. What's more, every moment we are away from you feels like a millennium. This is real love. This is the love that we're trying to achieve by every activity we do in Krishna consciousness from day to day. This is the goal. We should never forget. Now, one way that sandalwood is part of Krishna's Leelas is that each day, early in the morning, under Mother Yasoda's supervision, I was reading, the cowherd boys decorate Krishna's face with sandalwood and other auspicious substances, beginning with his tilak. In Sri Rupa Chintamani, text 16, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the tilak on Krishna's face is only on his forehead. But some authorities say it extends to his nose, much like the tilak that we as Gaudiya Vaishnavas wear today. And in Govinda Lilamrita chapter 4, verse 17, it's described that to apply tilak on Krishna, his servants generally grind gorochana. Gorochana is a product produced from cows, together with sandalwood, and apply 2 vertical lines on Krishna's face. And then they fill the space in between with black aromatic musk. In between the tilak, they put musk there. And under Mother Yasoda's supervision, there's a servant boy named Makaranda, and he's the most expert in applying this tilak. Just like, there's devotees who apply tilak, and there's devotees who apply tilak. I'm not so good at it, but many times I see devotees, it looks like, it's just perfect how they do it. So that perfection is actually there in that Makaranda, that devotee. He puts the tilak on Krishna. Still other boys also do this service, sometimes using a kunkuma instead of gorochana Just a detail for you. Sometimes using kumkum instead of Garochana. Great details. Govinda Lilamrita chapter 3, verse 65 describes that the gopis, because they come into the service as well, the gopis like to paint Krishna's forehead crimson color with kumkuma. The boys do their seva, then some of the gopis come and they paint Krishna's forehead crimson color with kumkuma, which the Shastra says reveals his passionate nature and also points to his subservience to Sri Radha, whose feet are smeared with red lac. Now, whenever Krishna's tilak fades, due to exerting himself, in the forest, with the boys or in the Rasa Leela, his friends reapply it, meaning boyfriends or girlfriends, using natural pigments like Manashila from Govardhan Hill. Now you have to excuse me, I do a lot of research. I couldn't figure out what Manashila is. But they replace it with Manashila from Govardhan Hill, Giriraj Govardhan Ki. Now along with tilak, Krishna's forehead sports a dot of sandalwood paste in the center of his forehead, sandalwood pulp at the edges, curly locks of hair along its border, and designs drawn in minerals as well. Wow, Krishna's all attractive. Now the spot of sandalwood in between these two vertical lines of tilak are just above Krishna's eyebrows. And they serve, it's so sweet, as a mystical charm that hypnotizes the gopis, who become attracted to gazing at their lover's face. You see how important sandalwood is in the pastimes of Krishna. The spot of sandalwood in between the two vertical lines of tilak are just above Krishna's eyebrows, and it serves as a mystical charm that hypnotizes the gopis, who become attracted to gazing at their lover's face, sandalwood paste. Now, in his Mantartha Dipika, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes how when Gaudiya Vaishnava Brahmins chant the syllables of the Kama Gayatri mantra. We have 7 mantras as Brahmanas, and one is the Kama Gayatri mantra. Within that Kama Gayatri mantra, there appears the name Kamadev. Kamadev. And he writes that the syllable Ka is equivalent to the full moon of Krishna's face. The syllable Ma is his right cheek. The syllable De is his left cheek. The syllable Va is that spot of sandalwood on his forehead. And the syllable Ya is the half moon of his forehead itself. So next time the Brahmanas, the devotees who are Brahmanas, chant that line of Gayatri Mantra, you can remember that Va is the spot of sandalwood on Krishna's forehead. Now moving on, Vidagdha Madhava 42b means 42b means the verse 42, but there's 2 parts, so it's part B. Our great hero, Rupa Goswami, he writes, once Vishaka Saki warned Radha of 3 things that have the inconceivable power to attract people to Krishna. His flower garland, his name,
Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari. Vajabhakata Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari. Sri Gaura Hari Sahi Goshta Bihari. Nanda Jasomati Chita Hari. Dhira Damodara Ishaya Kana. Bhova Mandire Basi Karaha Bojana. Nandera Nideshi Bashi Giri Baradari. Baladeva Saha Saka Vaise Sari Sari. Shukta Shakhari Vaji Lalita Kushmanda. Lalidana Durga Tumi Dadi Mocha Kanda. Dabora Mash Boda Rotika Pritana. Jaskuli Pista Kakir Puli Payasana. Kapura Amrita Keli Ramba Kirashara. Amrita Rasalama Dvadasha Pakora. Luci Sinisar Puri Ladura Sabali. Bhojana Korena Krishna Hoye Kutuhali. Radhikara Pakayana Bibida Bhanjana. Paramayanande Krishna Korena Bhojana. Chale Bale Ladu Khai Sri Madhu Mandala. Bagala Bajaya Deya Hari Bolo. Radhikari Gani Hari Nayane Akone. Tripta Hoye Khai Krishna Jasoda Bhavani. Bhojanande Priya Krishna Subhasita Bari. Sabe Mukha Prakaloy Hore Sari Sari. Asta Mukha Prakaliya Jata Sakagane. Anande Vishrama Kore Baladeva Sane. Jambula Rasalane Jambula Masala. Tahake Krishna Chandra Sukhe Nidradela. Vishalaka Shiki Pucha Chamara Dulaya. Apurva Saya Krishna Sukhe Nirayaya. Yasomati Anga Priya Danishtaya Nito. Sri Krishna Prasad Radha Unje Hoye Prito. ललितारि साखी गण अवशेष पाया मन मन सुखे राधा कृष्ण गुण गाया हरि लीला एकमात्र जहाँ प्रमोदा भोगारती गाय ठाकुर भक्ति विनोदा भक्त वत्सल श्री गौर हरि भज भक्त वत्सल श्री गौर हरि श्री गौर हरि सहि गोष्ठ बिहारी श्री गौर हरि सहि गोष्ठ बिहारी नंद जसोमती चित हरि नंद जसोमती